So, good morning, everyone. Today's webinar, the YIF Pathways of Possibilities, is on the topic of tech-focused careers, where we'll get to engage with the YIF alumni. So, before we begin, I'll give a brief description of the Young India Fellowship. So, ever since its inception a decade ago, the Young India Fellowship has helped young individuals switch career paths meaningfully, explore diverse areas of study and practice, grow further as working in professionals, start organizations, and create sustainable impact while solving problems at the core of our society, all while belonging to a global community of fellows. So, the moderator for today's session is Vedika, who was part of the YF18 batch. She is a user experience designer at Zeux Innovation, a Mumbai-based design consultancy. Previously, she was the executive assistant to the CEO of Synthesis Business Group. She enjoys using design thinking to solve real-world problems, especially centering around education and mental health. A psychology graduate, she loves analyzing people from their behavior patterns to communication styles, which makes people watching a favorite pastime. So over to you, Vedika.
Thank you, Glenn, for that generous introduction. Hi, everyone. Great to have you here today. I'm especially excited about our conversation with the alum we have on our panel. So just to kick things off, before I introduce the panelists, quick disclaimer. The views that you're about to hear today do not in any way reflect the organizations that our panelists are part of. This is simply their individual views. So to introduce our panelists, first we have Shakti Shalikram. He's an expert in human-centered design, and he has graduated from the Integrated Design and Management program at MIT. Before MIT, Shakti was the head of product for Quidditch, which is India's largest drone services firm. Many of you may know Quidditch also as a pretty well-known startup that came out of Ashoka. So for Quidditch, Shakti led a team of engineers to build the next generation of drone-based solutions for enterprise customers. He's currently global product manager at Cricket. I think that's how it's pronounced. Great. And he has a master's in design from MIT. Yeah. So thank you so much for joining us, Shakti. Great to have you here.
Thank you, Vedika. Great to be here.
Next, we have Sonal Bobde, who is a data scientist and an ML practitioner at Visa. Sonal, I'm going to rely on you to unpack these terms for us later during the session. She's also ex-Schlumberger, and she has a master's degree in analytics from the University of Cincinnati. Sonal has a diverse range of experience in using data science to solve problems in domains like operations planning, sports analytics, and election result analysis. Sonal also had a stint at the Ashoka's Trivedi Center for Political Data. So she'll talk a little more about that in our session as well. Great to have you, Sonal. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure to be here today.
So our last panelist for the day is Nitish Kumar. Nitish is responsible for, So Nitish currently works as, apologies everyone. Sorry, I'm having a little bit of a issue finding Nitish's introduction.
Let me just go ahead and
would you do me?
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. No worries. So hi everyone. I'm Nitish. I'm from the 2014-15 cohort of Young India Fellowship at Ashoka University. Very brief introduction. So I'm currently working as an assistant vice president at Genpact, and my main job is right now looking at the market growth of our digital technology products, which are very focused on specific US clients. Before that, I have close to 10 years of work experience, which spans across technology consulting, strategy, and product management. Before Genpact, so I've been in Genpact for almost 6 years now. Before Genpact, I was in Deloitte, and there I worked again in the tech consulting vertical of Deloitte. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. I graduated, now it's 10 years back. So in 2011 from IIT Roorkee, and then like I said, in 2015, I graduated from Ashoka. Yeah.
Thank you, Nitish.
Go ahead, Vedika. No worries.
So Nitish also has experience in social sector consulting, where he's advised corporates and NGOs with their CSR strategy. So that's
exactly. Thank you.
something else that I thought was very cool. And so thank you again to all our panelists for joining us. I know it's been a challenge with because all of us are in different time zones. So thanks again for taking the time. Just now that I've given your introductions, Nitish has given his, maybe Shakti and Sonal, you could tell us where you are right now, what it is you're working on, and which batch of the fellowship you're from.
Go ahead, Sonal.
Sure. So hi, everyone. I'm Sonal. I'm from the batch of 2015. I'm currently working at Visa in the Bay Area as a data scientist. I, like Vedika mentioned, I was a part of the Trivedi Center for Political Data. So that's where I actually developed my inclination towards data science and analytics. And it planted a seed in my head that this could be like a really cool career option for me. And then I began to pursue it from there on. And it's been an incredible journey so far, 5-6 years into data science. And I'm looking forward to do more great work in this space. So Vedika actually asked all of us to share a fun fact. So a fun fact about me is that I used to be an ambidextrous kid. I think I still do a lot of different activities with both, like different hands, although I try to build skill with one hand now for one particular activity. But as a kid, I could also write with both hands. So it was pretty convenient while I was doing homework. I would just write with one hand and then with the other. So that's one fun fact about me.
Very cool. I got to say, I'm jealous. Sounds like a cool.
Wow, that is a really cool fun fact. I think this is kind of hard to follow. Okay, but I will try. My name is Shakti. I'm from the batch from 2014, so 2013, 2014 batch. And right now I'm the global product manager at Cricket. And Cricket is a company that builds an ecosystem of products for people who like to make things. And so we make we make machines, which are like hardware. We also make the software that goes with it, and also the consumables, our line of consumables that go with this machine. And my role here is to own and maintain the vision for new products. So I start with suggesting that this is what we should make now, and then take it all the way from there while interacting with engineering, industrial design, marketing, copyright, everything, all teams, and take it all the way to the market. And I also really like making things, which is kind of why I went into engineering and then pursued my master's. And fun fact. So my job doesn't allow me to make a lot of things, but I kind of fulfill that void by working on a robotics team, and we compete on a TV show on Discovery Channel called BattleBots, and it's a show that I used to watch a lot while I was growing up, and so like 20 years later, it's nice to be at that place.
Wow. Again, very, very cool fun facts. Nitish, I think we haven't heard yours yet. So do you want to go ahead?
Okay, so yeah, so fun fact about me, I would say, so I mean, at least it's fun to me, which is I love to read a lot about philosophy. And I have this tendency that whenever I'm conversing or having any debate, I have this tendency of turning that debate into a philosophical one. So fair warning to you, Vedika, if I go in that direction, you can stop me.
Sure.
Yeah,
we'll let you philosophize just a little bit. Right.
Perfect.
Great. Thank you, guys. And just a quick round of where everybody is right now, where you're tuning in from. Nitish, do you want to just...
So I'm based out of Boston. Go ahead, Sonal, Shakti.
I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area.
I'm in Salt Lake City.
And I'm in Mumbai, the only one in India currently on the panel. So guys, just to start off, right? Since we are here, what brings us together is the fact that we're all alumni from the Young India Fellowship. I think our attendees would be interested to know what it is that led us to the fellowship, and what the experience was like, and how it was after getting to where you are right now. So I know it's a pretty long question, so feel free to take a little bit of time. And yeah, I'll start off. When I came to the fellowship, it was, I think I was the 2017 to 2018 batch. I came because I was quite confused and disillusioned with Indian higher education as a whole. I came saying that I wanted the YIF as an extra 1 year to add to like a 4-year undergrad and then go to the US for a master's. That was the supposed reason that I told my parents and everybody. But the real reason was I read the course curriculum and I said, there's no other program that interests me and excites me. So that's kind of why I got to the YIF. And I think in that respect, it fulfilled all of my expectations. So yeah, I'd love to hear what your journey was like. Sonal, would you like to start us off?
Sure, I can go first. So I think I am actually a metallurgical engineer. I did my bachelor's in metallurgy. So I was working in manufacturing, and about a year and a half of working in that space, I realized this is not something that I want to do for like my long-term career at all. And then I realized that I'd never given much thought about what I wanted to work in. It was always just, I got into a good engineering school. It's 2 kilometers from my house. Fine, I'll just, go there or chill for 4 years of my life and then figure out. And then I realized, okay, I didn't have anything figured out. So what am I going to do next? And one of my friends from undergrad actually recommended this program to me because I was always very active on the extracurriculars when I was in college. I was always like doing something about the magazine committee, bringing up new topics to a debate. And he was just like, there's this program, they have 24, 26 different subjects in 1 year. I think this is something that just reminded me of you when I took a look at it. And I was like, wow, that sounds incredible. Let me see what it is. And that's how I stumbled upon the fellowship. And then I looked at the curriculum. I was just amazed at what it offered. And I was so curious to learn all of these things. So I came in with, I wouldn't say with no expectation, but I did have a few things in mind. I thought maybe economics is something that I could explore. I love numbers. What else is there? I love that there was a course about mathematical thinking, but at the same time, I also loved reading a lot. And Shakespeare in the world also sounded very, very fascinating for me to learn, So I just came to the fellowship. While we were picking our ELMs, I saw Gilles' ELM. Gilles is actually a professor of political science at Ashoka. And at that time, he was setting up a data center to make our political reporting more, data heavy. And I thought, okay, this is numbers. I'm going to love it. So that's what I worked on for about good 8 months. Learned coding from actually some of the YF seniors who used to come for, some of these marathon nights that we had where we would be writing an article about a recent election that took place in some state. So just learned a lot of these things on the go, really loved it, and even got my first analytics job out of YF at Schlumberger. So Schlumberger was on campus hiring for their advanced analytics team. So I worked at Schlumberger for 2 years. Really incredibly loved my work there as well, and thought I should do a master's. And that's how I came into the US, and I'm still working in this space. So had it not been for YF, I don't think I would have found my calling. And I know it was a very long-winded answer, but it had that intensity to it because it's been 6 years now. This is the 6th year running, and it's kind of really been a lovely journey.
That's incredible. Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
Nitish, would you like to tell us about what brought you to the YIF and how your experience was?
Sure. Uh, so I was someone who was already working before the fellowship. So I already had like 3 years of work experience before joining Young India Fellowship. So for me, I mean, I was working in tech consulting, and most of my, batchmates from engineering were trying to crack the CAT or into IMs at that point. So, uh, I mean, it's in engineering itself, I kind of realized that, okay, until now I've followed that race, but now I'm not going to do that. So, uh, and then at the same time, I was very curious about just how the world works, right? So there were so many institutions which you see on our daily life, right? If you're just going to office, you deal with so many things on your way. Uh, so it's not just, I realized that I'm very narrowly focused on technology, whereas I want to understand, hey, how has politics evolved in this country? How did we deal with the Britishers in more detail? Like we have studied that back in maybe eighth or ninth standard, but I wanted to like really learn that again. Similarly, as simple as money, right? Like we use it every day, but how does the value of a rupee fall or rise or stuff like that? So I was just so curious to like know these things which are there around us all the time, but we just don't know about them. So that curiosity kind of brought me to YF, I would say. And then in the YF itself, I would say there were two major things which at least held from me. And I think that's the another thing about the fellowship, which is everyone has their, if you ask like everyone from our batch, they might say it was a very different experience for them. Like no one matches with the another experience because it's all about what is your background, what kind of, things you bring in. So for me, the experience was one, I would say was self-awareness, a lot of self-awareness, which is, uh, so we had like, for example, a couple of courses on leadership, right? Which are a lot about, hey, let's try to understand what are your own strengths and weaknesses. So I spent a lot of time on just understanding who am I, right? What are the things which I'm good at and what are the things I'm bad at? And one major point which I remember in one of the leadership classes which was made was you ought to focus on your strengths, and that's where your unique leadership comes from. Because most of the time, like you look at all the leaders and you say, hey, I want to be like that leader, I want to be like that leader, which is good. But then at the end of the day, you have to have your own unique style of leadership, and that really comes from focusing on your strengths rather than weaknesses. uh, like we had a course on art appreciation, right, by Anunay Chaube, the famous course. So I remember like we were sitting in a bunch, like 7 or 8 of us were sitting in a group, and he told us to look at a painting and just uh, like told us to interpret that painting, and all of those 7 people had a different answer. And that kind of surprised me. That also kind of again showed me the same thing, that my interpretation of the world and my views about things, about issues, are also driven a lot by my own history, by the way I grew up in my family. And that also kind of helped me appreciate others' viewpoints, that it's also about the context in which they grew up. It's not a white and black answer to everything. And then I think second big major thing was coming from again a very engineering background, which was very very competitive focused, and the whole mindset was very scarcity based, which is, hey, everyone needs to just focus on getting a job, and people are like fighting for it, and all the things we most of us are aware of, which happens in engineering colleges. And then I think from there, when I came to Young India Fellowship, most of our assignments were group assignments, and then even if there was an exam, it was like an open book exam. So it kind of helped me. Again, everyone knew, we are always told like collaboration is important, but I think I really understood the essence of it in the fellowship, which is when we actually worked on group assignments. And then it like made my mindset move towards more of mindset of abundance, what you call, right, which is, hey, we can all work together to expand the cake itself instead of fighting for the individual pie. Yeah, so I would say those, majorly those two things. And third, I would say courage. And that's again a very personal thing. I think before YF, I wasn't that courageous in some of the situations, but when I remember Rudrangshu, Mr. Rudrangshu talking about in history course about makers of modern India, and I realized like a lot of these people, a lot of these leaders who work for India's freedom were actually normal like people like us. It's just that one day they stood up and they said they're not gonna, suck it up, and they're just gonna fight back. So stand up for it and fight for the right thing. So I would say, yeah, majorly those things which really helped me in the Young India Fellowship program.
Wow, that's quite a lot of solid takeaways. I think I resonate with quite a few of the things that you and Sonal have mentioned. Before I share mine, Shakti, would you like to go ahead?
Sure. And I'll try to keep it short. Uh, and also because like that's also the truth. I didn't really think about the fellowship as, at least I didn't have a really good um, reason for joining when I applied. I think it just seemed really fun, and it was an opportunity to learn a lot of things. And I knew someone who was there, and she said, this has been great. You should try." And that was mostly it. It was kind of on a whim, and a friend and I we just decided to apply. But I feel like that's one of the best things I've done on a whim in my life, and it was far more influential than I expected it to be. And not from at least personally, I don't think I learned a lot about technology in the fellowship because that's not what it's for. It's not. But I feel like I learned a lot about the context in which you would apply this technology and build products. And I think that was critical. And that's something that's very unique to the fellowship and not something you get in other places. Um, I think my biggest takeaway, and this is like cliched, but I feel like I met amazing people there and who were and that was also through people I met at the fellowship. And and there I also decided to apply to grad school, and it was um, yeah, it was uh, uh, and something that I don't think I would have dared to try before the fellowship at that place that really gave me the confidence. And like Nitish said, like all these people, they're just like us, like they're all regular people, and one day they just decided. So I think that was probably one of my biggest takeaways.
How each of our experiences were so different, and yet there are common threads of what brought us there, like curiosity and a certain sense of we're not sure exactly where we want to go next and what we want to do. I think for me, like Shakti said, the people were some of the biggest takeaways. Similarly, my closest friends today are from my batch and across batches really at the fellowship. And that's something else I found even when we had our first conversation, right? All of us. Just the fact that we'd done the fellowship kind of removed 2-3 barriers of social interaction that you would normally have, and we could jump right into it and feel comfortable talking to each other and sharing our experiences. And I think that's a pretty incredible thing to enable, and I think the YIF definitely did that for me at least. So just to get in to dig in a little bit more about our YIF experiences, can you maybe share one or two instances, memorable instances from your time at the fellowship? It doesn't have to be related to what you do currently in technology, but anyone can start.
Go. So one of my favorite courses at YF was Shakespeare and the World, which is taught by Professor Harris and Professor Menon. And I used to write a lot when I was a kid, but I hadn't done that even during my engineering days a lot. And, even while I was working after that. And for some reason, this course motivated me so much. So at the end of it, we are all supposed to present an act. It could be anything, right? It could be a reading that you do as a group. It's essentially a group assignment. People did plays, people did a Bollywood take on Shakespeare, and like lots of really interesting, cool stuff. Poems of Aga Shahid Ali and Shakespeare, and essentially wrote Othello as Kashmir, Delhi, Islamabad, and that entire context that we have in the country. So it was really incredible for me to just be able to write that, to stitch together works of two incredible authors and write something meaningful. And coming from an engineering background and sitting with all of these incredible English majors in a class. But the one thing that I remember is so many people, when they read that piece, came back to me and said, you know what, it was incredible. And that's the beauty of YIF. It doesn't matter where you come from, but if you're good at something that you may not have a background in, you're still appreciated. There are people who have your back and who are really like cheerleaders for you, right? And these are people, this was a very unique experience for me, because coming from, like Nitish said, an engineering background and a rat race, and then you have all of these peers who are so supportive and incredibly amazing, and the fact that they're also equally gifted and talented, it just made me feel so good about myself. So that's an experience that I think I will never forget. I remember Professor Harris also liked that piece very much, and it sort of just made me feel really good for a few days until it sunk in. But that was one experience that I cherish a lot.
Thank you. Yeah, I think Shakespeare was one of my favorite courses as well. I was one of those English minors sitting in the class, and it was still very different from the experience of Shakespeare I had before, in a great way. So, Nitish, would you want to share?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's tough to say one favorite, but I mean, I think there were some aha moments, right? You said, hey, what were those one or two? So one, I think, aha moment for me, which I remember was in the course of leadership, which was by Dwight, right? So which was, he had this thing about politics, right? Which I had already experienced it because I had worked for 3 years before joining YF. So, but then Professor Dwight talked about how there are different types of politics. First thing he told was that, hey, whenever there are more than two people, there will always be politics. So just forget about, hey, there will never, like, you can never be in an organization where there will be no politics. Even if it's social sector, even if it's government, no matter what organization you are in, there will always be politics. So the idea is not to like run away from politics. The idea is now how can you play positive politics, and which he describes. So there are different categories of politics. One being, for example, Machiavellian, which is very negative kind of politics. But he said what you should do is more of a positive politics, which is, can you use politics in a way where there's a win-win for all the stakeholders, including for your organization and for all the people, and then maybe you as well, right? So I think that has been with me throughout, even now when I'm working, with multiple clients, with multiple people, obviously even in my company, which is, let's not run away from politics. Let's just see how can you positively use it to get better impact. So yeah, I think that was a big aha moment for me. Shakti, you want to share?
Sure. Yeah, no, that's, I also remember both of these courses very fondly. I think Professor Dwight is amazing, and even Shakespeare. That was one of my first interactions with anything by Shakespeare. And at the end, they enabled us enough to write our own version or write our own play. So I think that was a huge step up from never having read any Shakespeare to. So that was, yeah, both of those were also very influential. My and I forget the names of the courses because it's, yeah, I just forget them. I think it was ecology of the environment, and there was another course by Hirsha. Both of these courses, I think, for me were influential because they helped me see like a hidden part of, one, like society, how often a large infrastructure projects affect populations or people in different ways, and especially like a lot of them displace people, and these are things that we don't encounter in our lives. And in ecology of the environment, we also spoke a lot about how when you make things for really cheap, that's because someone else is paying for it through their lifestyle. And it was, I think that was a really, really big um, uh, like aha moment for me. And that's something that stayed with me since then.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing. I think Mihir Shah was, again, Mihir Shah's course, political economy was, again, something very influential for a lot of us. I remember during the last class, I think there wasn't a single dry eye in the room when he finished. Everyone was just very emotional. So just to shift gears a little bit and get into how each of you has sort of built your career in technology as it exists today. Maybe we can talk about that. And it'll also be great if you can share how higher education played a role. So a lot of people, I think, wanted to know about how the YIF can be a stepping stone for a master's. And if you could talk about your journey through that as well, it would be great. Anyone can feel free to start.
So I think I haven't done a master's after Young India Fellowship, so I would let first Shakti or Sonal go for it, and then I can obviously talk about what I learned from YIF and applied in tech career.
Okay.
Sure, sounds
Okay.
good.
Sure, I can go first then. So when I applied to YF, I never thought I was going to do a master's. It wasn't really part of my plan, and so it would be a lie that I went to YF for grad school because I never thought of it at that time. But I did know. So I loved my engineering course. I was really happy. These are all, so I was really happy to be in that environment. I did realize that I don't really like doing that uh, as a job as such, but I still really like being uh, still making things. Um, so and so while I was in undergrad, I also knew that, well, I kind of had a sense that if I ever go to school again, I think I would like to go to MIT. That was because I was always, anything you'd see, that name would always keep coming up. And it was kind of a dream at that point. And when I was in college, I'd never met anyone who'd even applied or gone anywhere. And so it was always this thing that some people somewhere go there. And I think BIF kind of changed that for me. I was like, yeah, these are just like people like us do that. And so I think that was a huge shift. Um, Also, a lot of my friends from my batch helped me through the process. Also getting recommendations. So logistically also, I think it was very helpful.
Mhm.
Um, and so grad school is obviously, it was a huge part in my career. And this is a job that I got mostly because I studied this process. And this is a job where I apply on a daily basis things I've learned in grad school. So that way, I think YF was very influential.
Lovely. So can you hear me? Okay, great. Sonal, would you like to share your story?
Yep. I think it's very similar actually to what Shakti said. Like, I didn't walk into YIF thinking that I'm going to do another master's, right? But I did come into YIF with a very open mind and, a journey to really uncovering what I would want to do in the future. And I think YIF did help me with that. Um, Again, like Shakti said, I wouldn't say that you learn a lot about technology per se in YF, but it just depends also, I think, on your approach and how you can pick the nuggets that you enjoy and try to connect the dots and see which career path that fits in. For instance, to give an example, I remember we had a guest session by Abhijit Banerjee, and he talked about, his book Poor Economics and Randomized Controlled Trials. it's so similar to what we do in A/B testing in technology, right? And because I had that kind of an exposure to randomized controlled trials, I think when I came into technology and had to do it at a product level, it was so much more intuitive for me than just people who come from a pure engineering background, I would say. So there are those, I think, pluses that you get. You have to keep an open mind and really like look for these nuggets, draw them out, stitch your own story, and make it like truly the path that you want to take. I went to Schlumberger after a YF because I also thought that given I enjoyed working with Jill so much on a data heavy project, it might be better to also explore whether I like it in a corporate setting, because an academic and a corporate setting might be very different, right? So I decided I did not want to go directly to a master's, even though I loved working in analytics data science. So I went to Schlumberger and I found great mentors at Schlumberger actually, who thought that I could, push the boundaries really, like, even though I did not have that necessarily statistical background or, computer engineering background, it was something that I could pick up very easily because they could see how logical I was. And I think that kind of critical thinking ability is also something that you will develop a lot in your time at YF. And then one thing led to the other, and then I ended up at the University of Cincinnati. They have one of the oldest analytics programs in the US. It was earlier termed as the MBA in quantitative analysis, and it's very heavy in statistics. So that's what drove me to the program, that it's inside a B school, but at the same time also gives me those skills that I think I need to bridge that gap and be able to talk the language in technology. So it was a mix of things that got me here. But yes, I have to admit that YF was a huge turning point for me particularly.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I think that's also really great advice about kind of customizing your own fellowship experience and knowing what you're coming there for, what you're looking for, and it's going to be different for all of us. So yes, thank you for that. Nitish, I know that since you haven't done a master's, that
Yeah, definitely. So, so I think if you look at the tech ecosystem, there are two like broad trends which you will see, especially if you look at how they are evolving and what's going to happen next 10 to 15 years. So one is that a lot of stuff is getting automated, right? So if you used to write, let's say 100 lines of code earlier, you could do that in 10 lines of code. So a lot of code is getting automated by artificial intelligence, or just like the number of languages which are coming, abstract languages which are coming. So one is that. Secondly, I would say, if you want to learn something, like if you want to learn a coding language, it's become very easy, like just to go online, maybe go to Coursera or something, and you could just pick it up. You can learn it in a couple of months. Obviously, you will not become an expert, but you will learn the basic skills. So and why I'm telling this trend is moving in a direction where if you only have the tech skills, you will not have the differentiation, because everyone is going to do that. And a lot of it is anyways getting automated. So just having the coding skills will not differentiate you in the world of tech, which means what's going to become important, and that's what we talk about, right? Which is, as robots take over in a way, or as AI takes over, what's going to matter is our ability to work together as humans and our ability to ask the right questions. And I think that's where YF brought a differentiation for me. And let me give you some examples, right? So for example, so in the tech consulting world, right, where I'm talking to clients and I'm just trying to understand their problem statement, a lot of times, so what I do different from others in a way is that I always place much more importance on, I go on that company's website, I learn about, hey, what's their history? How have they evolved over time? What are the values they stand for? I look at a couple of their earnings calls and try to understand what is really the CEO thinking, what kind of views they have on not just their product, but on customers, or even like issues like data privacy and stuff like that. So that helps me, again, it's cliched, but get a holistic perspective of the problem statement itself. And it's also relevant in the product management world, right? So if you want to create an app, being a techie, let's say you want to create an app for a particular product or for a particular utility. So one is obviously you need the coding skills, but if you can't understand your end customer, right? Like we say, customer is God, but understanding that end customer needs that contextual understanding of their culture, of their history, of how the economics in that location works. And that's where, again, Young India Fellowship or the liberal arts education really helps to get that viewpoint. And that might not have been important like 20 years back, but now everything is so interconnected. You try to build an app, there are implications on society, there are implications on politics. So I think that's one. Secondly, even when you're building products, like one big example is of AI bias, right? So when we are building a lot of AI products, what happens is, so let's say let me give you an example. There's a product which you're building in artificial intelligence, which is, hey, an application which predicts whether you should give a loan to a particular person or not. So it's kind of automated and it's telling you yes or no, based on different factors which you are putting as inputs for that particular person who's applied for a loan. Now, if your training data on which that algorithm is trained is very restricted to only a certain set of gender and a certain set of race, it is possible that solution will always reject the loan applications of those other minorities which were not part of the training data. And that's where what we call as data bias. So things like that. So those things, I think I did not automatically see them earlier, but with Young India Fellowship, I've got that lens, which suddenly makes me realize that there's a bias going on. And I remember like there was a course in Young India Fellowship on gender bias. And where in that course, we used to watch like a Bollywood movie every class and then debate on it. And it was so interesting because the teacher like made us watch the Bollywood movie and said, now watch it from a gender perspective. And suddenly like all my favorite Bollywood movies were ruined because I could see like they were promoting so many gender stereotypes, especially about the women or the girls. So and that is relevant again, like I said, even when it comes to the tech world. And then thirdly, we all know, right, after your product is built, when it's going in the market, there are huge implications on the how if it really like goes, like if it really grows a lot, like a lot of social media products have, it will start impacting the society, and the politics. We know there's a huge debate in US about how social media companies have impacted elections and stuff like that. And those kind of things, again, now I'm very comfortable in getting into that debate, right? Which is, hey, okay, how does this, and because those are things where there's no right answer. It's a gray area. And that's where that knowledge from Young India Fellowship helps, which is, hey, what is the data privacy issue here? Or what is the political issue here? What should the product do? What should a product not do? So I think those, for me, obviously, I mean, I think my differentiation in the tech world has been 70% liberal arts edge, and then 30% is, coding and stuff like that. So yeah, sorry for a long answer, but yeah.
No, that's great. I think I relate a lot to that because as somebody who's a non-techie, right? I never thought, like 5 years ago, if you told me I would have a career in tech, I would have laughed, right? I was horribly intimidated by code, horribly intimidated by AI. But I think that courage and that willingness to even say, okay, I can understand this if I get down to first principles, right? It's common sense. That really came for me with the fellowship, just by virtue of being forced to handle different subjects, right? And grapple with different kinds of thinking. So I really do relate to that. I think now, as we go forward in our conversation, I'll open the floor out so audiences can send their questions in. We had somebody specifically ask me to leave a lot of time for this. I'm sorry I couldn't. We have about 15 minutes. So feel free to start sending your questions in. So one, as people type their questions in, I just like to put one out there for our panelists. Since all of you are based across the US, right? I'm curious, is that something that's an inevitable trajectory if you're looking for a career in tech? How do you see opportunities in India now? And yeah, what's your perspective on that?
Sonal, you want to go first?
Yeah, I can go first. I think we live in a very global world, particularly when we talk about technology. I think there are no barriers of language, of which country you're from, which academic background even you're from, Vedika, as you provided your own example, right? I think that leads me to believe that I wouldn't mind being in a completely different geography tomorrow and doing the same kind of incredible work that I'm doing. I think it's just by chance that I happened to land here, also because I wanted a very data science heavy program, and I did my master's here, which got me here. And then I got this incredible opportunity with visa, which I'm enjoying a lot. So it just depends on what your trajectory ends up being. But I think India is equally amazing, probably growing at a faster rate than the US, I would say, in a lot of different new products, just because of the kind of market that we are and the economy that we are sitting on. And like the one word answer to your question would be no. Nothing is limited to a geography or location, particularly when it comes to tech.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's good to know, I guess, especially in our post-pandemic world, that might be even more true with so many teams going global.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I mean, go ahead.
I think I wanted to work with consumer electronics, and that's something that I wanted to build things which impact a lot of people and are used by a lot of people, and maybe this is like, and I know a lot of startups in India that are working on great consumer electronics right now. At that time, I think I did not come across any companies that were working on world-class consumer electronics. So, and also this was just a product of going to grad school and working around there after graduation. So I don't think that's, like someone said, no, but that is, and that is changing a lot over time. So I think there are a lot more companies that are building world-class products in India. And also India is a great place to start things, because you have so many people, and every market, even smallest of markets, has like millions of people in it. So maybe I think at some point in my life, I do want to go back and start something in India.
Well, good to know. Maybe our next panel, all of us will be in very different places. Right. Go ahead, Nitish. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I think my view is very similar, which is location is not a barrier. There are similar opportunities in India as well, similar opportunities in US as well. Maybe 20 years back, one would have said, hey, US has more tech, but that's not true today. We have, all exciting startups coming up all over India as well. I mean, that being said, though, I would say it's definitely worth it to, just have international experience. It's not just being in US, but maybe in some other country. Like I have worked with the same firm in India for 3 years, and now have almost worked for 3 years in US with the same firm. So it kind of, again, gives that diverse experience to you, just understanding how different cultures behave. And actually, when you change geographies, that's when the whole liberal arts things also plays even more part, which is because now you're suddenly moving to a new culture, especially like in US being, too diverse. You meet people from so many different countries. So yeah, so I think you can have an experience for sure if you get an opportunity. But again, India has equal, exciting opportunities in tech world.
Right, that's great to know. So we have a lot of actually audience questions coming in. So I think I'll jump right into that. This question, so I'll just read out the questions, and as and when you'd like to take a question, just feel free to unmute and answer. So the first question we have is, what made you decide to go back into technology after experiencing the YIF? And I think this this speaks to how many people talk about going away from engineering into social sciences, and everyone here has really stuck to tech. So did you also, a second part to the question, did you already know when you came to the YIF that you would definitely continue in technology? So that's two questions. Would you like to go ahead and answer now and then we can do the next, or what would your preference be? Shall I read out all of them and then shall we pick and choose?
So I can quickly answer. I just read through the question as well. So I think the first part is what made you write back? Yeah, so I think, so before I came to YIF, Manas, I really did not think about going back into tech. In fact, just before Young India Fellowship, so my first job was with Deloitte Tech Consulting, but then after that I worked with social sector consulting, which was a lot about working with NGOs. So before YIF, actually I was working in social sector. And surprisingly then when I did like you said, self-awareness. So as I understood more about myself, I thought, the skills which I'm really good at, the strengths which I have, and those are things which I like, that's where I'm going to go next, right? And I found, at least for me, that at that point, those opportunities were more in the tech consulting world rather than going back to the social sector. So I would say keep an open mind when you come to the fellowship. Don't go with unless you're really, really passionate about tech and you are sure that you want to go into that after that, which is also fine, right? Again, so if you want that, then again, these courses you can view from that lens, right? So every course you can think about, hey, tomorrow if I'm going to work in a tech world, how is this perspective going to help me? And I gave all the examples throughout. And then regarding placements, right, which is your second part. So at least for me, and I think that's what happens even now, and again, admissions team can help you with a better answer, but the fellowship does help you with jobs. So there are companies which come to the campus. There are tech companies which came to the campus. Like I got my job directly through the help of, the campus placement team. So it's not just your alumni connections from before. There are a lot of tech companies which come. And even like, let's say if there are not a lot of companies coming, you can always go to the placement team. If there's a very niche thing you want to work in, they actually leverage their connections to reach out to those specific companies. In fact, they will give you more personalized attention in that case. So so I don't think that will be an issue. And even package wise, I think once, when I started back, my package was, as per, it's not that it suddenly goes down or something. It was as per, what I was earning, and then obviously more than that. So yeah, and then again, like if you can always see, like we can talk more separately if you want to, but that was broadly my thoughts.
Yeah. So I think I just had but maybe one thing to add, and which is that YF does help you with placements, and there is a very good network. But I would also advise against joining YF for the placements, because that's not your incentives are not going to be very well aligned. If you want, if your priority is getting a high paying really good job, and that's your priority, then I think there are like many other courses which are geared towards that. And I think YF is like that that wouldn't be your YF is not the best place if that's your priority. I don't know, do you guys agree? Is that
Yeah, I would agree, Shakti.
Yeah, definitely, I think.
Yeah, I think also the fact that every year there are different companies coming, and it's not a standard roster of companies that keep coming back. So it definitely, that's not something that people can come to YIF for and hope to have that expectation fulfilled. So I think I definitely agree with. So I think we don't have any more unanswered questions at the moment. So I had a question for all of you. I was wondering, how today do you keep yourself engaged with the fellowship, and what are those threads that still linger for you? with the YIF? Are there any? I mean, it's fine if there aren't, just putting it out there.
I can go first on this one. Again, I who didn't mention it, and Nitish and Shakti have already done that. So I have to say that. And it's not just that. I mean, we talk about YF, all of us talk about this incredible network, right? But I think what we underappreciate a little is that the accessibility of the network is what makes it that much more amazing than networks that you hear about, from other colleges maybe. So that gives us that competitive advantage. So if I ping a fellow from across batches and say, hey, I really need to know about this space. I'm trying to learn about a new product or new technology. Can you hop on a call with me? And they most likely not turn me down, right? Or they would tell me maybe in 2 weeks when I'm here because I'm traveling right now. But you always get that answer. And that accessibility is just so amazing. And I think it stems from a feeling that all of us have experienced, and that is the fellowship, right? It's that sense of belonging, the sense of community. It's so tightly knit. And I think that is what the fellowship is for me today. And in terms of how I keep touch, I love what the alumni network is doing right now with all the groups, interest groups. I remember joining the food club during the pandemic. I started baking in pandemic in order to be competitive and prove that I could also be a good baker. And I made fabulous cakes at the end of it. So for like 6 months, I was just baking cakes and sending it to all of my friends who had their birthdays during that time. So yes, that's another way how I keep connected. It's not just, always the formal engagements, but a lot of just informal, fun chit chat across batches with different fellows across geographies.
Mm-hmm. I think I'm a part of that food group as well, and I do recall you asking for a recipe for a chocolate cake, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, that sounds like me.
Nitish, did you want to go ahead?
Sorry, can you repeat the question, Vedika? I mean, I have an answer, but I want to be again sure.
Yeah. So I was just wondering how all of you, if you do, kind of stay in touch with the fellowship, or how you're still connected to it, if you are at all.
Got it. Yeah. So, I mean, like Sonal said, right? So definitely one is the friends from the university, and it's not just, our batch. So like, for example, when I was working in Genpact goes to Young India Fellowship every year to hire. So like there are people from all batches in the company. So we have our own internal group, and then, we can chat all the time on that and discuss stuff. So I think that's one way. And then definitely whenever, there's a alumni meet, or I try to visit whenever I'm in India. But I think apart from that, I would say, so, and I think this is also relevant for the tech world, which is I try to read a lot and I try to learn a lot. I think education is not anymore like a one-time degree, like we say, right? I think that's what I picked up from Ashoka as well, which is you have to be doing continuous learning. So even now I'm reading a couple of books on, one is on philosophy, another is on tech world. And then I do a lot of Coursera courses on new technologies which are coming, but not just technologies, even on the liberal arts side. So the other day I was just very curious about health. So I'm doing a course on human anatomy. So I think that kind of curiosity came from the fellowship. And then when I'm doing those courses, I kind of relive those classes. So I think, yeah, that has stayed with me, which is just learn beyond technology, learn about, what is happening in the world, have a broader view of things. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
It's great that you've continued to kind of have that intellectual engagement that started with the fellowship. I do remember that somebody from my batch, I think, had created a folder with all of the course material that we had done in our batch, and kind of cheat sheets for every lecture. And sometimes it's just so nice to go back to it and look at it and kind of feel like I'm back in class and engage with that subject. So that's a really nice feeling.
I think I don't think I do a very good job of being on groups, and that's why I don't have that part, but I do keep in touch with my friends. And also whenever I have an opportunity like this, I always take out time, and it's always one of my priorities that I do want to engage with the fellowship, give back in any way possible.
Yeah, and I think Shakti, you and I had quite a long conversation yesterday, and it was supposed to be about the panel, but we ended up talking about so many other things. And that's something that I've found, like Sonal said, fellows from different batches are always willing to pitch in, set aside time to give back in any way they can. So, for me, I think another big part of the fellowship was, after the fellowship, I had a job that I didn't get through Ashoka. So I was quite disconnected for a while, for a year or so. But when I would travel, my job involved a lot of traveling. So when I was traveling in different cities, I would always hit up fellows on the WhatsApp group. And there would be somebody who's willing to tell me where to go to eat, or tell me the best place or the best things to do in that city. And just one of those ways that the community, I think.
Please share with us all that information, where to go, what to eat.
For sure, for sure. But I should warn you, you will get flooded with a lot of messages on WhatsApp groups as well. So I think that sort of brings us to the end of our session for today. I think we're a little over time. And once again, thank you so much, Shakti, Sonal, and Nitish, for joining me today.
Thanks a lot for conducting the session, and thanks a lot to Shambari and everyone on the team.
Yeah, thank you so much for organizing it. Just one quick question. If some of our attendees want to get in touch with you, what would be the best way for them to do that?
I think for me, they can just message on LinkedIn. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Same. Just send me a request, but also add a small note that this is where you saw us, and that would be really helpful. And whenever I get something with a note, I always reply.
I second what Shakti said. If you send me just a LinkedIn connection request, it might just go like not catch my eye. But if you add a note, I will make sure to get back. So, and LinkedIn works for me as well.
Great, thank you, everyone. Glenn, did you have something to add?
Yeah, so thank you so much for this session. It was really insightful. I got to take a lot of insights, and I'm pretty sure even the people on this call got to learn a lot. So yeah, thank you so much, everyone. Yeah.
Thank you.